Howdo guys, it's Luke at Geekgaming Scenics, and this is the video that you've all been waiting for. I'm going to take you through step by step how we build this World War II gaming table. I'll see you after this. So this gaming table needs to be lightweight, needs to be strong, and it also needs to be as nice looking as possible. This is one part of a 16 by 4 foot World War II inspired gaming table. Now, I normally use 6mm ply and then 20mm, 25mm batten around the outsides and inside. However, wood and stocking issues at the moment is pretty awkward, so we've had to settle on 9mm MDF. This is a little bit thicker than usual, however it did add a hell of a lot more strength. But 6mm ply or 6mm MDF is normally ample. Now, using bead like this around the edge of the table is multi-purpose. One, it makes the wood very, very strong. It stops it from warping, and it also adds protection to your foam base layer. What I do to attach this is we use D-clamps to fasten that down, and then we pilot the holes and drop in some screws. Now, the screws that I'm using will countersink themselves. If you don't have any screws that do this, do countersink the screws, because you don't want these screws scuffing and scratching up your mum's best dining table, do you? Once you've got that assembled, put 2 extra supports across to add strength. Now, the first problem with using 20mm bead is most foam, the cheap foams anyway that I use, come in 25mm depth. So the way that we cut this is with a massive foam cutter. Now, the reason I'm doing this rather than using 20mm foam or 25mm wood is we have a lot of 20mm wood bead and we have a lot of 25mm foam. So this is the most efficient way for us to do it. Plus, it is a very useful tool for cutting large pieces of foam down. And as you can see, you get a nice, flush, level gaming table without any protrusions. Now, this is going to be a trench table that's loosely based on Brecourt Mannor from World War II. If you've seen Band of Brothers, you'll know which bit that I'm talking about. So it is a representation. And also we've got to think people have got to play on this. Now, the trench pieces that we're using, we cast up in another video. If you want to watch how we made these, I will put that video in the link below. But the reason why we resin cast them rather than just making the small amount that we required is to add strength. This needs to be a very durable board, so if they're resin cast, they're going to be far stronger than using balsa wood or coffee stirrers or sculpting it into the foam itself. Now, to apply this in, it's a very simple process, is trenches. It's just a matter of marking out the distance that you want and cutting it with a snap blade. It's far more efficient and quicker this way. Now, a question I get asked all the time about gluing foam. Don't mess around with PVA glues. Use polyurethane glue. This stuff's called Gator glue, Gorilla glue. It's brown. It's activated with moisture, so all you've got to do is spray the opposite side with a bit of water, and when you press that down and put some weights on it, in about 20 to 30 minutes, you're ready to carry on working with it. Polyurethane foam reacts with water and turns to foam. So it's perfect. It's not going to budge, it's not going to move, and it dries very quickly. Keep your PVA for doing your MDF buildings and your wallpapering. Now, while we're talking about glues, for sticking resin to polystyrene, I tend to use MS Polymer, which is clear fix. It's got loads of different names, but it's a marine sealant. It's very flexible. The trenches are going to get a lot of play on them. They're going to get knocked, they're going to get banged. Having something that's rather flexible does make it a lot stronger, okay? So that's why we use marine sealant for that. We just stick them all in place and then cut some foam just to hold them till it cures after a couple of hours. Now, trenches are dug in and all the excess dirt are thrown over the sides. Now, we could just build this up with modelling compound, but we need to keep the weight down. This small 5-10mm height difference of compound could add another couple of kilos to the board. So that what we do is we cut some foam board to a rough shape, no real measuring, just cut them out and copy the landform around the trenches. And then when we come to put the compound on top of this, we're using a quarter of the product that we would normally be using. So just glue all that in place again, MS Polymer. You could use polyurethane glue for this, but loads of little weights would take forever, so we're just using MS Polymer for this. Now the fun part. getting messy. This is modelling compound. It's the perfect tool for making realistic and very hard wearing gaming tables and creating that realistic landform. You mix it up with water and it'll set in about half an hour. So mix little and work in small spaces at a time, but it's perfect for adding strength to the trench walls. It also gives you trench floors some realistic undulation, which you can sculpt this if you want and put like footprints and everything in if you want to go that far. But how we're using it is just to cover the trench system up and create the landform in and around the trench system. If you want to get this nice and flat, give it about 15 minutes where it starts to firm up, moisten the area, and then you can temper that flat with a piece of polystyrene or a lollipop stick or whatever you want to do that with. One thing to add as well is if you are mixing multiple batches, clean out the pots that you're using because the plaster that's going off acts as a catalyst to the next batch. Which is fine if you need it to dry quickly, but if you're working with something like this, just clean out your pots in between. We also use the modelling compound to fit all the 3D printed sandbags. If you want to know where I've got them from, they'll be all in the links below as well. To give the landform a soil-like texture, I mix soil and tile grout together and then spread that all over where we've done as modelling compound. And then with the matte Scenic sealant, we spray that all over and that activates the grout and seals it all in place. And then we leave it overnight to set. Now once that's all dry and set in place and solid, it's now time to start working on the inside of the trenches. Now to mimic the plank works in the bottom of the trenches, we just use bits of balsa wood. Now balsa wood is soft, but once sealed in place with thin super glue, it turns to almost plastic. However, do this in a well ventilated area. It does smoke and steam everywhere. It's not very nice, but it does seal it solid to the base and it also makes the wood very, very hard. It's almost plastic coated. Just use the cheapest, thinnest super glue you can find. Now for painting, it's not something that I spend a lot of time on. All I tend to do is just base coat everything brown, so it's got a base layer of paint on there. We airbrush the sandbags a cream colour, and then we just do some dry brushes of some paler greys and creams on dry brushes in the woodwork, and that's it, done. Because the rest of the process is going to be covered in Scenics, and anything that does need any extra details, painting and in things like that, we do it when the board's finished, because most of this, you're not even going to see it anymore. Now at this point, this is when the board starts coming to life, when we start putting in the Scenics. Now Duncan was in my neck of the woods, pardon the pun, and he decided to help me start laying the trees. Which is nice, because with it being his board, he can have some input, and it means that the trees are going to be placed where they need to be and what he's happy with. Because at the end of the day, he's the one that's going to be playing with it, and he's the one that's going to be looking at it every day. So it was nice for that little bit of input, plus the trees start to make the board make complete sense. It looks a hell of a lot more natural just with the trees on, and we've not fitted them yet, we've not put any bushes in, and we've not done any of the ground covers or anything else yet. This is when the board starts to come to life, and this is the bit that I start really enjoying. How are we going to fix the trees in place so that they're stuck in there fast is the screws on the bottom get a good coating of polyurethane glue. Once you stick that into the board, that then expands and works like a plug. It expands in the board, it holds it in solid, they're not coming out. Them screws are in there fast. But to add extra support and to get rid of that horrible plastic lip around the base, what we do is we get some modelling compound, mix it up, and then we put that over the top of the plastic lips. This, one, adds more strength so they can't be knocked out, and two, it just makes it so the ground under the trees flows and looks a lot more natural. Now for the people wondering how we made the bushes, they're more or less exactly the same as the trees. I will be covering in the next video how we made them, but it's so similar to the tree video. That's all linked below. Now I dry fit all the bushes and rip and tear them to fit and follow the tree line as natural as possible. And the best way about actually dry fitting this and seeing this is we can see whether it's going to be a bit intrusive of play. I know bushes don't live under trees, but if we can get them close enough to the trees so there's still enough room to play and there's still enough of people to get round them and actually enjoy the game, that's what I want. And if it means I have to stick some under trees a little bit, I'm not too worried. And at the end of the day, a bit more foliage and a bit more greenery just adds to the entire gameplay. Once I've figured out where we're going to put them and how we're going to place them, I stick them in place with contact adhesive. This stuff's amazing for stuff like this. It stinks, so we're using a well ventilated area, but putting it down underneath the bushes and stick it on the board, it grabs almost instantly. And once that goes off, they're not coming off there. Now we're on to the final stretch of the board, which is all the flocking and all the ground detailing. What I do first is I just paint on a good layer of PVA glue before I go on with my foam flocks. The reason I use foam flock is it absorbs the glue better and it sticks down solid, it doesn't come off. Sawdust flocks don't tend to stick very well. Foam flocks, however, absorb glue and stick very well. I put a small scatter in a dark green foam and then I cover that entirely with mid green foam, just leaving little gaps where the dark green foam is so it shows through slightly. And then on the raised areas, just going with a bit of light green foam just to highlight them areas and bring them up. All the products being used in this video, guys, you can purchase below at my store, so check the links if you want to buy these flocks, modelling compound, sea foam, whatever you need, it's below. Now under the bushes and trees and everything, you don't want to be putting foams and grass covering. What you want to be doing is putting something like this pine forest ground cover that I use, because not much grass grows under bushes and trees and it blends very well into the foam flocks. And it's just a nice separation between the bush and tree edges to the foam, and it blends very, very well, and it hides all the just painted areas where we've hid the compound with paint. It's just a very nice covering. You can apply this dry, so if you don't like any areas that you've covered, you can either put some flock over the top of it and we'll seal it later. So why I like working like this, you can put everything down. If there's any things that you want to tweak and change, just add it on top. Like I did with the roads and the paths and the walkways, I was thinking, well, if there's trenches there, there's like breaks in the trees, it's to simulate where people would walk heavily, or there's been vehicle movement, or you can just throw it on top, and at the end of the day, if you don't like it once it's done, there's nothing stopping you putting some more flock over the top of it to hide it if you don't like it. However, I chose to stay with it and left it. And at this point, I would just still sprinkling some of the pine forest ground cover over the larger greener areas to simulate walkways and brown paths and things like that. And while I was looking at it, I was thinking, that looks quite nice, it's pretty solid, but it doesn't resemble field grass. So what I decided to do was to seal it all in place, let that go off, and then we'll go in with some static. Now I'm not staticking this how I usually would static grass a table, for the reason it's field grass, and field grass is loads of little clumps, and I want to simulate that. So what I'm doing is I'm going to make some 12mm tufts with some very pale straw grass, and then from that I'm going to blend in some 6 and 4 autumn grass from my range, and then just do some autumn tufts and then some 4mm tufts in autumn as well. If you're interested in the applicator used, it's a 75 kV app, and it'll be in the links below. Now how I lay these tufts out, I start with the long 12mm tufts, and I start where the ground's the highest. And then what I do is, like in nature, is I go from the bigger, larger, longer tufts to smaller and shorter tufts as you work your way out. And that way it looks really natural, and you just sort of fraying them out away from the bigger patches, and that way you get a really nice formation of tufts. And to me, this resembles field grass far better than what foam flock or applying static with an and applicator can do. The appearance of it when it's done is just so much better. It's well worth the extra effort. However, that extra effort did cost about 6 hours of just placing static grass down. So it's not a quick process, but the look is well worth the extra effort. Now, if you are thinking of getting a static applicator for this purpose, then I'd suggest getting one, because buying tufts for tables this size isn't very economic. I've got no idea how many I've actually used, but I've used thousands of tufts, big, little, small, all different sizes, but it's well worth the effort and the look. Now it's just the final finishing touches. All the trees get sprayed with a varnish, and then what we do is we sprinkle them all over with just some leaf flock from my range. It's just so when your eye catches the foam flock, it sees little discs and little shapes in the tree, and it just makes it look like it's covered in leaves rather than foam flock, and that That's just one of them little things that you don't notice until you actually see it in person, but it makes a massive difference. And just adding final little bits of detail like fallen leaf cover, these just ground up birch seeds, and just spread them all over the place just so you get in some more details and textures, and it just breaks that ground surface up a bit, and it just makes it look far more natural and realistic. Now it's these final touches that do bring it all to life, and they're not that hard to do, and it's just these little final details that people notice. Once you've got that done, just spray it all down with some more matte Scenics sealant, and then it's finished. Well, a quarter's finished. But if you're wanting to play on this table, if you're wanting to see it in person, just go have a look at it and feel of it in person. It will be at Salute on the 13th of November, and it's also Duncan's birthday, guys. Duncan is taking this board around the country. He's even going to be taking it to Europe, I think. He's going to be raising money for charities. Is the whole reason why he wants to do it is so people can play on it. He wants to get kids involved. He's doing a lot for the community and introduce more people to wargaming. And what better way to do that than with an immersive gaming table that's robust and fit for the jobs for kids to play on it. And I'm so glad that he's come to me for it, because it fits my whole ethos. I've been trying to raise the bar on wargaming terrain for a long time. And the support from you guys and Duncan means that I can invest my time in making better quality terrain, making things that use the scale modelling techniques and railway modelling techniques, but make it durable so it can be thrown in the back of a van and played with. Which wargaming tables are either a little bit under detailed and very strong, or they're over detailed and very delicate. Me, I think this is a nice compromise. I'm not totally happy with a few things on it, which I would do better, but I think for its purpose, I think it fits that. What do you think? Put in the comments below. Now, if you've liked this video, guys, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And if you want to support me, don't forget to buy my Scenics. You can buy them from shops local to you. There's a link below where you can find your local stockists and distributors. And doing that supports your community and supports them shops as well local to you. And if not, you can always buy it directly from me, but please use your local shops as well. If you're in London on Saturday and you're going to Salute, please show your support and go say hello to Duncan and just have a chat with him. And if you can get a chance to play on the board, do so. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. And I'll catch you again for another video. Love, love, love.